Okay, so I'm just going to start with some things that I don't think Pearl will miss at all, and then she'll hear it in the recording. Okay, so why I wanted to do animal crackers is, well, and actually that's the first time I think I came up with the best name, other than Fearless Drawing Animals. But um, I look back on all of the animal classes that I've done, and I've chosen to do them because of how much I love animals. And just as a observation, I note that I have not drawn nearly enough cats. And we won't be doing cats in this class because they're not weird enough. And I did want to focus on the strange and the wonderful, and not necessarily that we have to get super weird, but truly I've learned a lot about animals. You know, there's the spoonbill roseate, a couple. Do I have that? Actually, one class we did the spoonbill roseate. Girl. This fella.
Oh, that's cool.
Yeah.
You know, and I didn't know anything about this. I actually never even heard the name. So it was, you know, educational, right? And I think back on, you know, the lemurs that have just made me laugh the whole time, and because they're crazy eyes. So I want this to be fun, of course, but to my understanding, there's some people who are new to ink drawing. Can I ask for just, I can see you all. I have you all on gallery. If you have any Zoom questions on controls, let me know. But can I just get a raise of hands for, you know, if you're not too comfortable with ink? Cool. Okay, we're all in the same boat. Same size boat, same body of water. Awesome. It's nice to be on the same level. So I am going to start with a little slideshow that I've used in the past for just getting some technical things in our brain, you know, squeaking this morning. And then we'll get into action with what materials to use. Let me set up the slideshow so we can get into just some action. Thank you everyone for being here. And I have some little notes and stuff as we go along as we create. In that case, Pearl, we'll talk about materials. Okay, so here's some basic materials. They're more modern. Okay, this is a list of more modern. So you don't have to write this down. You're going to get this in the recording. You can pause it and write it. But Strathmore Bristol being the smoother, what they call plate, is really good for ink so that it doesn't bleed. It's similar to paper that's sized, which means it has like a starch on one side so that it doesn't bleed when you make a mark. And now some people with ink, there's some techniques where you want it to bleed, but it's just good to be aware of what paper you're choosing for that reason. Watercolor paper in cold press, or I prefer hot press, but it is always a preference. 140 pound would be perfect for ink. HB to 2B pencil, we're going to use that. I think I wrote that for, we're going to do a bit of a sketch in, and we'll talk about how we're going to sketch that in together. Technical pens, there's so many nibs and sizes. And there's also a brush that you can use. The brush that I suggest, if you have a choice, would be a sable or a really nice watercolor brush with good spring and a good point. India ink, definitely the traditional of things. And then there's carbon ink, which is actually my favorite. It's just good to note that it is permanent, so you have to wash your tools afterwards really well. And they can be thinned with water to get variations of gray. Calligraphy brushes that are made of goat hair or horse hair are also good, as you know, long as it has a good tip. And just do some testing, some mark testing, which we'll do together. Same with your nibs. It's testing your materials. Just have a little sheet to make lines. Even with your markers, you need to make sure that they're still working. They've been in a drawer for a couple of years. Master's brush cleaner is pretty common, but again, you can use any cleaner. And here's just traditional materials about why you would use them, really. Brushes allow control. You can get so many marks within one tool, so you can get thin, thick, fine. You can block in a whole area. You can get a dry brush, which is wonderful, a wonderful texture. So you can use brushes and nibs and technical pens all together. This is a little tip for using brushes, is to wet the brush first, then dip it in the ink and have a tester paper just to see if it's the right value that you're looking for. To shape a point, you actually twist your brush. I will demonstrate that when we get into it, so that you keep a point. And always dip the brush into the water first, then dab off. And this helps with control no matter how thick the ink is. Because usually as you're working with ink, unless you're putting the ink out into a little jar, but even still, it's evaporating as you're working. So it gets thicker and thicker during even an hour's, sitting. So nibs, they're really good for tiny details and clear lines. But you do have to clean them very well. When I was working back in the art store years ago, oh my goodness, did people ever buy like 12 at a time? Because they just, it's not that they actually last very long, but people tend not to clean them well or quick enough. So it depends a lot on the ink that you're using. So if you're using India ink, it might be a little bit easier, but again, just be mindful of those types of technical and studio practices with the tools that you're using. So pen tips, this is why when you buy a pack of them, you might get 4 or 6 in a pack, because it's giving you different point sizes. And you choose that depending on the area of tone that you're looking for. So you would choose an area very delicate where it's gradating to white to still like, it's almost like the highlight and the shadow. You would choose a finer point. Anything in the dark area, you can make it easier on yourself. It's more efficient to choose a higher or thicker nib point. Dun, dun, dun. Okay. Okay, what matters most is not about it working out. It's about pressure. And this is about your tool. Pens, not so much, but definitely the speed and the weight of how you are and how you hold the tool as well. But speed is definitely number one, because if you want a variegated line that goes from thin to thick, you're going to do a quicker line. And any line that you do that is very slow is going to possibly have some nervous wiggles in it. That could be intentional, right? There's people that I've met who actually have shakes, and I always suggest you work with it. So if you got to work with the way that your hand, which is also a tool, is holding that pen or brush or marker, and also how you move your hand is going to just affect the line work. Going bold, being expressive, trying things, being playful, having a variety, and the grip of the tool, as I said, be mindful of getting really tense. We will talk about that. We'll maybe do some check-ins with each other as we go along so that we're not getting too uptight, because that'll come through in our work. So mark making is infinite. We will definitely look at hatching today because of the fur texture. But just know that any concentration of any mark that you put down will inherently describe an illusion. It may not be the one you want, but you're going to create an illusion. And that's a good thing to know. And when we're planning things out and we're being very thoughtful about it, then you have more control to describe very specific value, light, shadow, texture, and form. Mm. And your style of mark making, what you're drawn to, like, I mean, this is, a little example of 12 of them, but I prefer scribbles, for example. So my ink work is not very, kind of like in the traditional Renaissance sense of, no, it's very scribbly and it has energy. And because that's what I enjoy, that's because of the process that I enjoy. It's how I enjoy creating the work. And so that gives you a style result. And I just don't want you to necessarily try and copy. If you like a certain style, you can definitely do little studies of that. But to just know that inherently what makes you happy is a good result style for you. Okay, so hatching and crosshatch, very traditional. Hatching is lines that are parallel regardless of their direction. And this can either be synthetic or organic. And we'll talk about organic in a minute. Keeping it consistent is a good thing, because otherwise it gets really messy looking. And when I say, for example, I like scribbles, well, that does not mean that they're willy-nilly. They're very specifically crafted squiggles and wiggles, okay? And it's about consistency no matter what you choose. So cross-hatching, we're going through the other way. So this little square on the bottom, that's a cross-hatch. So it doesn't need to be all perfect cross-hatch like an actual plaid pattern. It can be, again, I find this very scribbly, but it's quite intentional scribbly. You can notice in all of these, there are no outlines. And I think that's really important for what it's worth, is to not, this isn't a coloring book that we're doing, right? We don't need outlines. So at an edge, like the dark edge, it's just a higher concentration of mark making instead of a line boxing it in. I think that's the difference between people who, like artists who spend time looking at their options rather than kind of going in with sort of how we've been influenced in our lives, you know, which is very graphic design, and there's kind of like vector outlines. And I don't want us to get into that. This is the difference of like illustration and fine art. Any questions so far? Because I am not looking on gallery view here. Please don't hesitate if you have questions. So contour hatching, we're going to start testing our materials with this, just a little circle. We're going to do contour hatch and then a fur, just, you know, within 10 minutes or so. I'm going to give us a time limit on it. But contour hatching is where I'd like us to go with this capybara and other animals. Instead of just going in and hatching or cross hatching, contour hatching describes a form, and it shows the direction of the shape. Okay. Here's another way to think about it. When we see a shape, I want you to think about wrapping a string around it on all sides. And that is a guideline for where you make your marks. And we will put those in with pencil very gently so that we have guidelines in our sketch. Here's another way to look at it. And actually, why don't we just draw this out? Do it a little quick. This is a little quick 1 minute thing, guys. If you have a piece of paper next to you, just to get your hand in action. Now, we don't have a lot of value transitions with the capybara, but we do have some because there's light hitting the edges and whatnot. So I want to look at just a review of value and tone. We're going to have areas of white and light, and it's going to transition into darker areas, not necessarily in a crosshatch. Capybara's hair is more of a hatching style, but how much you layer, how close together the lines are, where they meet, where they fade, all of that will describe a transition. value is also relative. So we're going to have to talk about the background of the capybara, if at all we put one in, maybe with watercolor. But right now, if you look at the capybara image, it is pretty much all one tone. There's not any, it's not really high contrast. So it's just something to think about. The background color may, in the future with other projects, be something that affects the value within the positive space. Out of the notes here, the one that means the most to me is that we need to notice the values within values. In light areas, how are we going to create a variety of light? In the darks, how are we going to create a variety of darks? This is a visual in pointillism, which is, very popular and obsessive choice of mark making. It's quite beautiful. It imitates stone. Traditionally, a lot of renderings that were of studies of sculpture, the choice would be to use pointillism or stippling because of the result of it. And so if you have at any point have an abrupt transition where it's not gradiating out, smoothly, then it will create an illusion. So it's something we'll keep in mind as we go, of where we need to create more of a connection between some areas. So even in the lights, there is often texture. I think this is my last thing for the slideshow, is to don't worry about mistakes, because it's a small part of everything and it won't bother you as much. You just got to keep going. It's really important. I've had so many experiences in life of obsessing about one thing and going, oh my gosh, that is wrong, or that is not good. And then as you keep, here's my video, as you keep going, you're like, oh, I actually didn't notice. I don't even know where I made that mistake. Like I think it has a lot to do with life, right? It's, as you keep going, time goes on, you're like, oh, actually, it's so insignificant. So I'm going to do a spotlight here. Okay. Just got a piece of paper for now. We're going to do something with the time limit. Okay, quick. We're going to look at how to break down the shape of our capybara. I'm just using a sketch paper here. This is pretty decent. This is new. This is new paper for me. I like it. But I will be, with the final piece, using watercolor paper.
Oh, hot press.
I prefer hot press. Cold press is okay. But I don't like the texture of a lot of the cold press brands, and every brand has a different texture. So if you like the texture of the paper and you like the way your tool skips on it or reacts to it, then that's a good choice. And that's a good reason to choose that. But when you're not sure, I would have to say that a nice smooth surface, obviously it doesn't come through on camera, but there's not a lot of texture, heavy texture on this. And so I feel like I have a cleaner line. So we're going to break down in geometrical shapes. Capybaras love water. That was something that I learned about them, is that they love water, and they can actually dive for like 5 minutes, and they can sleep underwater too.
Wow.
But their noses have to be outside of water. And that's something that we're going to make an observation about, is that their ears and their nose and their eyes are high up on their head, because they often sit in the water like that and sleep. So it's, nature's how it's created so that it can chill in the Amazon River and sleep. Okay, the head, it's basically a rectangle. Doesn't have to be to scale. We'll work that out. And then we're going to look at this part and how that angles. It's really the angle here that matters. So that's how from this point down, you can even get a sense of that. And we're going to look at how that hits in the water. Then we can start to curve in. And add that little ear. Again, keeping it very simple right now. So take a little bit off the nose. This is a nice 3/4 turn. I liked this photo for this reason, but it wasn't as, oh yeah. Oh, I had looked at a whole bunch of other photos and I found that if it was more 3/4 turned, it kind of looked funny. And that has every reason as to what that has everything to do with why I choose certain photos. Is it might work in the photo, but in a drawing, will it work? That's my question when I'm making decisions. So I really liked this 3/4 because the mouth looks cute at this angle. Okay, I'm just going to make a little slip for the eye. And that's it. That's it for now. Now let's look at what materials we have. We're just doing this as a little test, okay? I have a ton of markers, and I'm going to look at just choosing a few because we don't need 12. I very much like brush pens. And if you don't know, I would suggest you use a variety of the tools that you have from finest to thickest and then something in between. Like I'd say 3 is good, 4 maximum. And we're just going to do a little swatch up here. That's my thickest. Make sure they're working. Okay. I actually don't think I want to go so fine. So there, I'm choosing these 3. Brush something and 2 points that are a little bit different from each other. I'm going to use the brush tip in the demo because you'll be able to see it better. But what this test is going to be about is the direction of the fur. So all I'm going to do is these, what we call those guidelines, okay? So the fur comes from the eye, shorter hair, down, under the chin, it starts to curve, describing that body. Shorter, we're gonna look at the length of the lines. So these are shorter. He's gonna look like he has a little 5 o'clock shadow. And then how they transition fanning around the nose. And that cutie little eyelid eyebrow. Oh my goodness. We've got a lot of fanning. Now, this is the time where I'd like to make a statement of, I know marker is permanent. I understand that that is scary. So let's just make a deal for ourselves right now. Right? So just say self. There are no mistakes. There are no mistakes. Whatever happens, we're going to make it intentionally part of the piece. So I'm here to help make that happen. But I think it really is good to just be, sure about that. That it's like, oh, did you intend to do that? The answer is going to be yes. And this is as much as you need to do. Just getting sense of directional guidelines and a little bit of overall proportion. We'll make more specific observations when we map it out. And then that bird. Now, I had suggested, you can change the bird up. I'll probably just for ease, work with the photo. But I also had like this magazine of birds, and I thought, wouldn't it be cool? Because that's apparently what capybaras are, beloved for recently, is that they're very social animals. And a lot of other creatures just use them as couches. Some really weird birds in here. I don't know if I want to take away from the capybara and put such a striking bird, but if there was a bird in mind, or if you want to change the color up, go for it. I do believe this is an AI image, just because the depth of field is a little questionable, but I don't think that matters. That's what AI can do for us. It might not be, it could just be a stunning photo, but regardless, it's a little questionable. And so how big is that bird on top of the head? And so we look at, you could even sort of use a tool and say, it's not quite two birds would fit into that capybara head. So the bird will be approximately here. And I'm just going to, again, break it down into geometric shapes and say, where is it? Well, its legs are just above the eye, and its body is a seed shape with the tail coming out past the ears, and the head and beak definitely comes approximately to the nose and no more. And that helps break down somewhat, because right now we're just looking at relative proportion. That's somewhat in the area of what we're looking for. And again, contour lines, we've got feathers that are describing the breast, and we've got a wing. These are long feathers, so they're long lines. We have shorter feathers at the neck. Cute little pattern under the beak. I like that. And then we have this funky little hat. It's the bird has a hat. The capybara has a bird hat. That is so, so funny. I might even exaggerate that. But I really like that head of that bird. Okay. Ta-da! Now, the final, just giving us confidence. Oh, let me see, Maggie. Ta-da! Fabulous direction. Oh, I love that little eye. Yay! I'm so thrilled with the giggling that's going to happen all morning. So the final thing for us, just as our little guideline here, is the water. Okay, so there's not much indication that we need for background. It's all depth of field. It's unimportant. We just need to make it look like he's in water. So again, contouring that water is around, and it's our perspective is pretty much looking this dude in the eye. Oh, by the way, we need to name him. Okay, you think about it. All right. So we're pretty much looking him in the eye. So that means our swirl, our water swirl, is going to be very close as a sphere. So it's not going to be like this. It's very, very narrow. So I'm going to look at these areas here and come from in front.
Can you show your paper, please?
Oh my gosh, I'm so sorry.
No, that's right.
Okay. Okay. So it's a very thin sphere. So it's not an egg. It's almost horizontal on both sides connecting. So we're going to look just at this area here and here and how it touches. So it's going to have a little outward and then really sharp coming back. And that's really all we need, truly, on both sides. And they don't even have to be the same. I'd say less is more. And we'll talk about the shading and areas where it's darker. Our sunlight is actually, all these circles, like our sunlight is up in here. And you might want to make a little sun up in the upper right, because that's going to be like all of these areas on the right will have less contrast, less lines. Okay, anyone need any more time to play with just different markers and who's ready to get into blocking this out on the paper?
You know what I love about this is having a recording, because if you don't like the way it turned out the first time, like I just found all my India ink and my nibs and everything. I haven't used them for like 30 years. But after doing it this way, then I'll go back and try it again using my India ink, or I might try something else. It's like a never-ending lesson class, because you can use all sorts of different stuff with the recordings. It's cool. I love it.
And you can pause, right? You can pause and
Yes.
you know, or fast forward. I like that too, because there's I actually do edit out spaces, just so you know, like the final recording might just be 2 hours because I'm editing out areas of unimportance. I'm not saying that our conversation isn't important. Oh, cat bum. Hi. I just got a new cat, and my friend Irene just gave me a t-shirt that said 1, 2, 3 cat. It's like 4 cats on, and I was looking, it's so cute because I have 3 cats now. But it doesn't fit me, like fits my left arm. It might fit one of my cats, but I don't know. I'm not too crazy like that. I don't dress them up. Okay, my loves, I'm going to set up. We're going to get into blocking this out. If you need more time, just please shout out. Don't hesitate to ask.
Sure.
Yeah.
Would you use artist board or vellum paper?
Is that the Canson art board you have?
Yeah.
Oh, what do you want to do? Soft pastel or watercolor after?
I think I'm going to do watercolor and watercolor pencil.
And sorry,
But-
so you have the art board and then the what?
Vellum paper.
Art board.
No, there's art board
Yeah.
is one and vellum paper is the other.
Yeah, I would use the art board.
Okay.
The reason for that is it's got a really nice texture for paint medium, and the vellum won't take it as well.
Okay.
Anyone else have surface decisions to make? I'm using this is 9 by 12. Yeah. 9 by 12. Which is just really good for the demo. I just on surfaces and for any of the projects, if you ever want to do something larger, just know that you probably won't get it done in class. That's all. It's not a big deal. You can always just get the basics started, and then just know there'll be a lot more work, because that's the only difference between size of things is how long you're spending on them. So you could even do these projects 5 by 7 if you have to know yourself and how quick or how slow, like how your internal rhythm is. And if you like to take your time, then you can go smaller so that you're not having to do 3 times as many marks. So I'm using an HB pencil. And with our pencils, we are going to be very mindful, very demure, very mindful of how our pressure is, because we don't want to indent the surface of our paper. So we're going to hold it very loosely. And as I was doing these little contour crescent moons, you can see I was kind of very, very sketchy. I'm not sure if I had my camera on at that moment. So I'm just being very sketchy. I'm not pressing, and I'm not being certain about things, okay? Because when we're blocking in relative proportion, these lines are guiding where the permanent ink is going to be. And so they don't have to be assured. I want you to think about how you are seeking. You are trying to figure out the size of something. And so doing it very light, very soft, continuous line almost is better than something hard and like harder pressure, and then trying to erase it back because you're like, oops, that's not right. Now, there is a saying, it's one of my favorite sayings when it comes to drawing and painting, is it's better to be it's better to be wrong and strong than light and right. But in this case, it's the opposite. It's better to be light and right than wrong and strong. Okay.
Charlena, is that the capybara's ear? Is that one ear?
Yes.
Okay.
It's got a little nodule, like notch in it. Almost, it's a natural thing, but it's almost like our earlobes, how there's the variations within it. It's
Okay.
similar to that.
Okay,
I think the
thanks.
second ear is underneath the beak of the bird. You see the little
Yes.
bushy
Oh,
thing?
yes. Yeah.
Yes, that is
Thank you.
that's right, it's right there, right there. And here is another perspective of the capybara where you can sort of see there's a little, almost like a bite's been taken out of it.
Hmm.
And that's
Okay.
a natural fold. Who knows? Like there might be a anatomical reason for that. Maybe their ears sort of flop down in the water so they don't get filled with water. I'm just making an assumption, but it's a good observation. This is where we want to look at those nuances. So we're going to look at how large we want the capybara on our surface. We want to make marks that are going to bring in the capybara within, because we don't want to go edge to edge and go off the paper. And this is where it's not about using a grid or sizing up or down. We're just going to look at our surface and say, I would like the capybara within this margin. And I'm going to give it about 1.5 inches, 2 inches. You can't see my marks necessarily, but I'm just making a little dash, a little visual border. Some people use tape. You can use tape if you want to create, you know, a frame that you're going to stay within. I tend to, you know, I have a block, actually. It's a watercolor block, so I don't need tape. Just need to know that I'm not going to go outside those edges. So if we then look at the capybara on the overall, I'm gonna just use my marker for this, okay? The overall, the top of the bird and the back side of the capybara. Oh my God, look at that. It's a square. It's a square. That's great. That is fantastic to know. So now I can sort of bring that in and make a bit of a square. I'm just doing it, eyeballing it. You can certainly use a ruler. Cool. Now I'm going to make a crosshair in the middle of that square, and look at that. Look at that. It's almost like he just got out of jail and he's got a teardrop under his eye. Capybara jail. And so this is how we work out relative proportion, is we're looking for what we know. And if the outer frame that contains our subject matter is a square, and the middle of that square gives us an idea of some really significant features, that's fantastic. So I'm going to put in that crosshair on my paper. Again, you can definitely measure that out with a ruler if you like. I will suggest, though, if you ever do that, you should eye it first and then check with a ruler so that you're training your eye to measure and adjusting after, or else you'll never truly give yourself the eye-hand coordination and the muscle memory. Okay, so we know that the capybara's eye is going to be around here, right above that crosshair mark. And so in that, I'm going to very gently, very loosely put in that square, rectangle from our sketch. Keep that handy. Keep that handy in front of you. That's why we did it, so that it's there to help. And because I made a border, I can bring that rectangle right to that edge. Now, looking at how much space I need for the water, and that's where I'm going to cut off the rectangle. Is my pencil lines okay on screen?
They're pretty faint for me, but maybe that's just me.
Okay, I'll go a little bit heavier, but please on your own do not. Is that better, Marley?
Yes, it is. Thank you.
Okay, no problems. Cosmo, do you want out? You want out? Mm-hmm. I make a decision. In or out? In or out? Oh my gosh. Cats. Okay, out. Out it is. Okay, and then now let's look at the angle, getting that angle from the top of that rectangle, basically to the bottom of the frame that you made. Don't worry if the angle isn't exact. It's no big deal. It's just relative. I'm actually going to bring in my rectangle a bit. Sorry, I said to go right to the edge, and yet I feel I sort of missed out on that little part in here with the hair. And that this fans out where his body is. And that's okay. That's where we make adjustments now rather than later. Okay, just making little adjustments here. And then where's the ear? Okay, the ear comes out of that rectangle and comes onto the side of that angle. You can keep this shape very simple for now. We'll refine it. And right above that eye is where we've got the legs of the bird. I'm actually going to put in the angle of the tail first. I feel that makes more sense for me, knowing that that's gotta, for me, I don't want the tail to hit the ear. I want there to be some nice space in there. So connecting those and making that almond shape. Just mentioning that because as you look at things you want to draw in the future, there's no right or wrong place to start. You should start where it makes the most sense for you. I'm putting that little circle connected to that almond, just with a hint of where the beak is, and that's all we need right now. Keeping it very loose, very scratchy, very explorative, okay? And that's actually now even more important because we're going to start cutting edges off. So we're gonna be refining that rectangular face, making any observations for nuances like this little bump in here. It's not just a straight down rectangle. So using your, it doesn't matter what eraser you use for this. It can be kneadable, it can be white. But you do want to pull back your lines that are too distracting or you've changed them. Okay, coming into that little cutie smile. And the cutie chin, which is just a double arc, upside down arc there. Oops, sorry. It's a double arc. And then changing the direction of the chin that extends out into the hair. And because we know from our sketch that it is curvy, contoured lines in there, I'll just make a couple of those. There's this crazy shadow. How do I get rid of that? There we go. It's better. Okay. And keep bringing in refinements where you see them. I have to bring this up a bit. Okay. And that includes in the ear. And that little dip is smaller shape on the top part and larger on the bottom. If that ever, like if something, a feature of an animal ever felt funny to you or you don't know what it is, this is so important actually for you to just kind of don't try and fake it. Just leave it out. Like it's, especially if it's a area that's not really significant. I have in the past, if I've ever wanted to, have an animal where the feet, like say a chicken, you want the chicken to actually have some nice looking feet, then you might actually need to look at a different reference if the photo you have doesn't have a clear shot of it, or look at different capybara ears. But I think that this is a workable shape. And then taking out those lines you don't need. And I feel there's a bit of a slope from the ear to the nose. I'm doing a little contour line where that nose is. I'm not going to worry about the bird necessarily right now. I'm just going to get right into the capybara. So I'm going to create some sketchy lines, just like in my little study here, of the direction of that fur. Again, longer lines for the longer hair coming down from the cheek and body. Shorter lines just indicating the direction of the hair around the nostril and the hair coming down in the front. The mustachio. I knew it was you. We don't need to put in the same amount of lines as we're going to be inking. It just needs to be an indication of where the contour lines are. I will put in that other ear though. Thanks for making that observation. It's so normal to get so caught up in this or that and forget about things like ears. So I can take that crosshair out now. So once you start getting comfortable with where you've placed things and it's looking like a capybara, I feel like, oh, maybe his eye should be over more. There's definitely a long snout, so you can even exaggerate that, you know. Would anyone like a check-in for their proportions?
I would.
Okay. Ooh, yeah, you got a nice wide face there. Now, you might want to crop your paper after because it's so on to the one side, which is totally fine. That's why we use paper. I feel that there's all that space to the
over here
side, which,
yeah,
like, I mean, I just don't think in this image, I think it'd be better if your final was cropped square.
Okay.
It's one reason why I love using board and paper that you can cut down. So I feel maybe your crosshair was a little off center to start, but the proportions are great, Marley.
Okay.
Yeah, and don't cut it now. You cut it afterwards.
Okay.
Anyone else want to check in?
I have a check-in.
Yes. I love him. And he's got a ducky.
Yeah,
Fantastic. Very
I thought
good.
that would be easier.
Yeah, sure. And actually it's I think it's, to me, you could play with it even further and make it into like a kind of a rubber ducky situation. Like
Yes, that's what I
actually,
was thinking.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I
a
love
rubber
it.
duck.
Yeah, it's playful. It's
a good idea.
exactly in line with their personality. And great proportions. Awesome. Yeah, well, you're only spotlight. Spotlight too. Okay. Fantastic. Very good. Great placement, great proportions. And the bird, I can't really see it, but it looks good.
Okay,
Yeah. And you got the ear there. Perfect.
thanks.
Okay. Here's the time to check in, Stacy. Yeah.
I don't know, can you see it? So like, I
can-
haven't put the bird in yet.
That's okay.
I kind of want to do the top one.
Oh, yes. Because he's looking down.
Yeah.
Love it.
And again, Jaybird, my youngest, we always use blue jays to represent them. So
Oh my goodness. Okay, that's great. I love the symbolism. And the color pop would be really great. Okay, Maggie, I'm gonna spotlight you. It looks great. It looks great. Hey, I'm so impressed. I like the texture of that paper because of your lighting. I can see that you've got a nice cold press.
Yeah.
Yeah, that looks really good texture wise as well. Okay, well, we nailed it. Laura, do you want to check in, or are you feeling good and ready to go in with ink? Do you want a minute? Just point your finger up. Okay. I'm going to get our ink together. Please, at any time, if you want what I sort of call it a check-in, you just ever want to, you need my, or you want a group consult or my consult, please just ask. This is to me, the only downfall of Zoom is that I can't see what you're working on. So it's really important that you feel comfortable and in a safe place here as a group to ask and receive that help. Because many times, even in a classroom situation, as I'm going around the room, if it ends up being 10 minutes of me, on the other side and then coming around, I can still be like, oh, wish I had caught that, especially before going into ink. So I'm going to ask, who feels comfortable going in with ink now? Raise your hand. I know it's a bold question. Who's just fearlessly going to go in with the ink right now?
Go big or go home, ladies.
All right, let's do it. Laura, I don't want to skip over. Do you want to check in for the drawing part? You're good? Love it. Okay. Love you guys. Here we go. We're going to start in the light areas first. This is something that I've learned the hard way over the years is if you start in the darks, unless your piece has a lot of very solid, specific dark areas, if you start in the darks, it can be too dark. So we're going to start in the lights and then fade out into the darks. So then you're going to choose your finest point. Okay. Now we know that our sun is on the top right. I'm just going to put my sharpener there. That's where the sun is. So that means we're going to start right under the bird bum, kind of on the left to the ear, where the eye is, and the left side, or sorry, the right side of the face here. Where do I personally feel comfortable starting? Right in behind the ear. So I'm going to come in really close actually, so you can see this. Dun, dun, dun. Shadows, shadows. I'm like on stage with a whole bunch of lights, and yet what happens when you have light? You have shadow. Okay, so I'm going to come in, start making these little hairs. Now, how much mark making you do is kind of up to you, and it is sort of determined at this stage. So I'm going to keep it very loose, knowing that I can always add more. So I'm going to get in just making a quick mark. So we're talking about speed. Okay, I kind of like a bit of a rocking situation here, going back and forth. And I like this swoop in the ear. What you do? This is my finest marker, and I'm definitely feeling like, okay, I'd like to go in to get some other values, but I'm gonna just tell myself to chill out and keep making, because this is actually giving some really good guides with efficient work, right? Because it's all part of the final. So looking at just around the eye, which is super satisfying. They're very short hairs around the eye. Now, it has to be darker above the eyelid, but we can always do that with another marker. So I'm going to come in the same marker and the same direction that's contouring. Okay, I'm going to take my medium-sized marker and start to come in with the same type of line where I feel the top of that eyelid is, and pull in some more lines above. And this is more of a, I guess I'm going to say like a professional way to create a bridge or something that has two different values, instead of having like an actual outline that we have created two different spaces, but it's very soft, smooth, transitional. Now it's very dark within the ear. So I'm going to come in to the center of the ear. I'm going to keep with the hair hatching, kind of like that. I'm making that decision now, so I'm going to have to stick with it. And it is darker where it meets the body, but there are spaces because there's the long hair coming out. So we're going to make that really choppy. And it's the same here at the edge of the ear. Instead of making a line, we're going to make that very choppy because it's darker on the ear edge. But it does have a nice gradation in the center, so I'm going to pull to meet. And do a couple little cross hatches here and there to create a nicer edge. I felt like that was a little too, dark and then lighter. So just a couple little cross hatches. So we've started with the light and that on the right, but now we're looking at kind of the darkest parts of the cappy, which is, well, the ear, the eye, and then the snout. So here's the thing, nothing's going to be darker than this. So this is where just be, this is what helps you know to stop. Okay, I don't want it to be any darker than this because it's not entirely black. So there's still white of the paper showing. How about Herbie as his name? Just Herbie? Like it?
Sounds
Kirby?
cute.
Like K with a Kirby?
Oh, Kirby. I like Kirby. I was
Kirby
thinking
Capybara.
I was thinking Herbie because they're herbivores.
Ooh.
Well, you can how about his name is Herbie Kirby?
I love that.
Herbie Kirby. Because of all the animals I've done in my life, I actually remember them because of the names. like mostly, so anyway, I really also, I feel like you're building a relationship with the animal as you draw them. And I don't want to the whole time be like, hey, you. Hey, you. Hey, you capybara. So here where things are lighter, like that space where that ridge is in the ear, we don't need to describe it in any other way than by leaving a space. So we're just leaving the white space. That's it. Okay. I know you want to get into the eye, but just to sort of, not so we have to dance back to this area, let's just trail off that ear in a nice little swoop into the body and taper out those lines into the longer hairlines that are there. And again, I'm using that medium point that I have, so it's denser than that marker I chose to start with. I'm not going to give you the numbers for what I've chosen because they're different brands. They don't really coincide. Now, one thing about the hair, as we put in the longer hair, is, you could stylize wise do 1, 2, 3, almost like same distance apart. But because it's a natural animal, I think actually crossing over is good. Again, it determines the style. And as we hit the water, it's much darker. So in that, I'm going to take my widest, and I'm going to come up from the water. Well, I know that the right side is the lightest side, but this is where the water meets and it's wet hair. So coming from, again, we're not putting in a line to where the water's edge is. We're just going to create a hatch. Okay, that is creating that line in and of itself. And it doesn't have to be right all in a row. There's also some variegation, which if you have a brush, this is a great place for it, because wet hair, when it separates, has a thin to thick kind of shape to it. As long as you stay, and again, I wouldn't put a piece of tape or anything to make sure it's like so straight, because more natural is best. But we're just coming down into those thicker areas, which would be like here and where it meets the water. Come on. Number 2 is in. I would actually, had I done this, or maybe, okay, I'm going to do the capybara again. And like not in our class today, but I'm going to do it again. But I'm going to do it with a whole body and put a cat on the back. Yeah, I have to. So we're going into the darker areas now. It's under the chinny chin. And if you do not have a brush pen, that's all good. Don't worry about it. This is where you're just going to take your thickest marker and make lines. You can literally create thin to thicker lines just by scumbling a bit in the center and hatching them out. Like, oh, it's not easy to see, is it? Okay. Here's a brush, thin to thick. You can also do hatches to extend, like so. And this is where you're hopefully observing the rhythm that you have. If you have a lot of patience, then you're possibly going a bit slower. I do not. So I tend to like rocking back and forth, and that is in essence what's creating a style for me. It has everything to do with my personality and who I am and how impatient I am for the certain things, right? I have lots of patience for certain things too. So coming in the darkest areas under the chin, and again, looking at the direction. Because we're bringing in color and possibly other media, I'm not going to suggest that there's so much detail happening here. We just need the indication of it. Now, going from under the chin to the actual chin, this is where it gets very interesting with ink or anything that's black and white, is that because the chin, which I'll just put in here, because the chin is one of the darker areas, and again, I don't want to outline, so I'm just going to put in the lines that are the direction of the chin. Okay, so because that's the darkest, then the body and behind has to be lighter, can't be just as dark. I mean, it isn't, but this is just those observations that we're making. So there's got to be an actual consideration of your value and where they meet. My brush pen is very distinctively different than my markers, so I'm just going to go back in to these dark areas with my medium-sized marker just to create some unity. Usually if you buy a set and it's all the same brand, the marker will have the same feel, but I have a completely different brand brush pen. And that actually is helping me go into, okay, now I'm ready for the cheek. Ooh. 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 Hey, Sushi. I'm just getting an indication of the longer hairs in there. Can always go back and add more. To bridge value, because it is darker, coming across here is just more concentration of marks. So if ever you're feeling like it's feeling too different or too abrupt, all you have to do is add more marks in between and bridge. I'm sorry. Capybara. Can't help it. It's in my head now.
I know. Every time I see one, I start singing it.
Capybara. It's such an awful song, though. I would like to put in the water just because I feel it's going to be a good grounding. So when you feel like you've got the hair there, all meeting that water, this is where putting in, again, just a couple indications. This way and this way. Oh. I don't feel there needs to be anything in the center personally, but if you're unsure, we can do a little critique. That to me is like perfect. Okay. So again, with that brush pen in the darker areas, where the splits kind of like from the nose down, I just want to look at the dark parts there. So again, instead of a line, we're going to place and pull in the direction. Even if the hair isn't obvious, you know the curve. If you're wrapping string around him, how is that going to curve? And because the right side will be Herbie's left side, but for our reference for all intents and purposes, it's the right side of that lip there. Because there's white hair, this is again where we jump back to a different size and we start to pull in from the dark spot. There's a heavy curve in here. And this is where we're going to have to bridge to the darker center of that lip. And this is probably the trickiest part of Herbie, I'd say, is that there's longer hair here that goes into the shorter hair. It's going to look like crap at first, and that is totally normal. Okay, so identify maybe under the nostril, and that's the darker area, and build up your darker spot there, and then taper out getting longer as you meet into the body. And how do we move it from not looking like how we want it and looking like crap to actually looking awesome? It's repetition, it's trust, it's patience and trust. Just knowing that as you repeat patterns, you will be creating that illusion. If things are ever feeling too straight, like, oh, this is a lot of one-way hatching, then you can always bring in a cross hatch just to keep things mixed up. Again, it's sort of like the scribble approach, but it all has to do with how you feel about it. There are very light long whiskers that, I mean, to do the negative space around them, I can show you how to do that. There's also, you can just do them dark. But if you did want to indicate these white ones, what you can do is put a more concentrated lines in between some lighter spaces, and it will, again, won't look kind of right at first. It's all about repetition. I, for one, would just put them in black. because this is tricky, this negative space business. See that that's somewhat coming into an illusion of whiskers. I've been playing with negative space a lot lately, so it's a good challenge. But it is one that you have to practice. I understand the concept, but it's like I understand the concept really well, but for whatever it's worth, I've taken classes on negative spaces. I've read all the books that I can get my hands on, and I still struggle with it. So just as, you know, learning is, it takes time, it takes persistence as well. So there's a darker area underneath the eye. That's very similar to the upper eyelid. I know I want to get to the eye. I know it does. I know it's like, I want to do that. But I just know it's going to be so satisfying to wait. So I'm going to just continue on with the dark areas of the nose. And then that left side of the face, because again, it's really light. All we need is a couple indications of short, short, short. Instead of a line, we're doing short, short, short marks, creating an edge, and then we can have fun with placing and pulling, place and pull, place and pull. And whatever line you get is the line that's it. You have to embrace it. So you can always practice on a tester. There's a very consistent whisker ordeal happening here. And they also show contour. Move your paper if you need to. Don't move your body. Well, don't contort your body. You should move your body. So using my largest brush for that nostril, just for the center. Oops, to plug in. Take a break in these morning classes, but like just gonna say this is so meditative and there's so much to do that you just take a break when you need it.
Feeling very therapeutic at the moment.
Do you feel like a capybara and chilling in the water with a bird on your head? Yeah. where that little ear that we can barely see meets, I'm going to suggest that we make it a little bit more obvious and create a darker face edge there. And then just a little indication of an ear that's lighter. Or else, because if it's too much the same tone, it is just going to look like he has a little bump on his nose. It's nicely repetitive. For the nose, nostril, I'm just going to do a fan out. And then a darker face edge. Maybe how about a couple contour? Yeah. I'm going to do a couple contour lines just to be like, yeah, this is the shape of the nose. Like I said, there's no right or wrong. It's just like exploring, how am I going to represent that in line? Come here, little one. You can leave lots of white space, but you can also just add I would suggest adding just a couple of lines that are really spaced out from each other. And I am craving some darker whiskers that are a little more prominent. Don't need to freaking mimic all of them, just a couple of them will do. While I have that thicker brush out, let's go into the eye. Now he does have eyelashes. Herbie is a diva. So if you can, do some hatching from a top, really thick, heavy line and some hatching down. That'll give you that attitude. It'll give you the markings you need in that space. Less is more. As long as it looks like an eye. Okay, there's hardly any marks in there. Oh, Herbie's coming to get you. He looks happier now with an eye. More content. do a little step back from your piece just to see where do you need to, if at all, place any more marks. I'm also going to suggest kind of erasing any of those guidelines you don't need anymore, but do a test in one area. Just make sure that your marker has dried. Usually doesn't take more than a minute, but just still smudges, ink smudges, because that is hard to cover. Okay. No matter where you are with Herbie, no matter what stage, I'm going to show you a more simple way of going in. So it'll be a bit of a different style with the bird, because you can do that, especially it's two different animals. You can mix it up. So I'm going to start it with this would be with a brush. It can be either brush and dip. I'm gonna just use my brush pen. I was gonna say I can get my brush and dip out, but we'll do a project where there's more black and I will get that set up. So just because this is handier, and this was invented, this is a wonderful tool, by the way, Pentel brush pen. It's been around forever. I have had this exact pen for 25 years. And the tip is perfect. And it is a travel pen and it comes with cartridges. And then I'm out of. Glad I checked. Okay. One right here. Do you have it? One moment. Organized this all yesterday, and what happens when you organize? You can't find anything. Aha! Oh, okay. Ooh. Oops. Wrong end. Okay. All right. Different way to go in with the bird. So I'm going to look at the beak and I'm going to consider the shape of the beak in one stroke. So it curves like so, and then there's another curve for the eye. That's all I'm going to do. Just a little bit of a gestural, simple approach. So breathe, get that curve in, accept and love your mark. There's a little bit of a maybe line for the bottom part. And I'm going to do a couple of hatches for where the eye is. Getting in the crown. I like the pattern here. Do, 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 do. I'm going to come in and get some of those main, again, it's the length of the feathers. There's the rough. So one of the tips I learned from Yuko Shimizu is to not sketch in all the details for certain things, because then you're starting to follow your lines and it becomes more like tracing and it's stiffer. So wherever you can feel comfortable and confident as much as possible, it would be good to just put in the marks as you are in the moment. I'm going to do, there's a couple of feather bits there. And I'm going to keep this guy pretty simple. I'm going to do kind of a striped stocking situation for the legs. So it's a continuous line. Again, I can add more. So I'm just sort of placing it in with a bit of a zigzag, like I was wrapping string around it and connecting those legs to the body. Again, with the contour, you can even bring in different types of lines if it's not feeling dimensional enough for you. Again, where you have a really, like on these, whatever birds you're referring to, if you have a real extreme where there's white and dark, because we're not necessarily putting in a background with ink. If we were, we would actually just do the background like this with ink or a value, doesn't have to be black. And then we would hatch within the face here and leave that, that white. So since I'm not necessarily putting in black in the background, all I need is an indication of those like pointillistic dots, and hardly any at all. So coming in maybe to the capybara and then thinking about, do I need any darker areas? You know, this is now a good time to establish your darks. Your lights are probably fine. I guarantee it. But if you need some darker areas, like within, say, the center of the ear, or around the nose and the mouth, then go for it. Especially if you found a tool you like. That's where going in and sort of unifying it into areas where we started out and you were like, you know, oh, I used a different marker there. It's a different line. Anyway, it's just one of the reasons why you would maybe go back in. Anyone want to do a check-in?
I will.
Laura, did you also say yes?
I did, Marley.
So it'll be yes, and Laura also. Okay, Marley, I'll start with you, okay?
Okay, so this kind of resembles a deer.
Yeah. Oh, the bird?
No, the capybara.
Not at all. That looks like a capybara.
Yeah.
Oh, no, it doesn't look like a deer, my love. No way.
Okay.
Although, I mean, we, you know, would love to do a deer sometime. No, that looks like a capybara. The bird, I think the only thing I would bring in is a little bit more of the finer marker into the center of it. Because
Okay.
right now it just feels a little bit more outlined in comparison to all the wonderful fur texture of Herbie. So
Okay.
Herbie rocks. Now we just got a little bit more work on the bird and you're great.
Okay, thank you.
And Laura, I'm gonna bring your screen up. I love
Wow.
it. Oh my goodness. Oh, he's got that look. I think it's perfect. I don't think you need to do anything more at all. Actually, maybe under the chin a little bit darker, just that swoop.
Okay.
And it would feel kind of balanced where you have like the darks throughout. That's the only place that I think would really ground it as well. Yeah, that's awesome. Minus an example. Was that on my end with that beep? Did you hear that?
Yeah, I did.
That was like an alarm. So I hadn't mentioned this, Annie, or to anybody, but just as I was working, I felt I had put in the kind of thicker brush pen that I had, but then I felt it was too different. So I came in with a little squiggly, with my finest. And I felt that actually just brought in all the variations of pen marks in here into this. Just that's the only thing I can suggest. And it's pretty picky.
Okay,
so
thank you.
now if you were concerned about that not being dark enough, you could go in with maybe the finer marker that you have just to go over a little area, but it didn't feel like that needed it to me.
It's just, it seems to start.
Under the chin?
Yeah.
Not to me, it's showing me the angle. So again, if you wanted to bring in the finer point so that you're going in the same curves as that thicker marker so that there's less white space and it's being filled up with the thinner line, it'll bridge it and merge it.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
I understand why you're thinking that. And just for resolving that, it's actually, especially at this stage, it's actually better to go in with a finer marker to sort of, so that, because if you go in with the brush again, or like the thickest one, it's almost too dark. And then you'll have the opposite problem, or like even greater problem.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, too distinct. Here,
Can I share?
Yes, I'm gonna put your screen on. Pearl, go ahead.
Just this.
Love it.
Oh,
Wonderful. So the only feedback for Herbie is on the lightest side of his nose. Even though it's a light side, to still bring the hair in, it's standing out too much as its own shape.
Okay.
And that is so just coming in with your finest points and hatching, so hatch marks that are further apart, just so that it doesn't feel too white. Right now it just feels too white.
Yeah. So just like a little gray tone on it.
Yeah, and hatches that don't have a lot of
Oh, I see the point. I see the gray point, yeah.
yeah, so just in this area, if you can just bring in some marks so that it doesn't feel too white.
Okay.
That's all you need to do. Wonderful work. I'm so excited.
Thank you.
Stacy, how are you? Oh, Maggie? Here, I'll spotlight Maggie first. Sorry, Stacy.
Okay. Yeah. Oh, wow. Yeah.
Yeah, girl. Uh-huh. Oh, I love the bird too. Great value. Really great value. Any concerns of like from your end? Because I think you're done. You're pretty quick. Wow.
Yeah, I think I was a little too quick with the bird.
No, I don't feel that. No, I don't feel that at all.
Okay.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, sure, you could have done more finer detail and yet the bird's going to stand out more than Herbie. It's not about the bird.
True.
It's Herbie's friend, but it's not. I mean, the bird is, again, you can always choose to do more high, rendering and more detail work, but I feel it matches quite nicely.
Yeah. Okay, thanks.
Very good, Maggie. Stacy.
I am slow. I don't even have a hint of a bird in there.
Oh my gosh, such a good job. I think you're just as your next step, just with water, there's a little bit of it just feels a little too quick, actually. Like, even though I said, I suggested just a couple of lines, I just feel it's a little too, it's actually too little.
I need more lines.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. And with the finer marker.
With the finer. Okay.
Yeah. Yeah, and you have to maybe spend a bit more time on the blue jay, as we were just talking about. So yeah, he's fabulous. I would stop there, babe. I really would. Like, I wouldn't do more work on him at all, because it's just it would be unnecessary. I think for everyone, have we all shared? I sometimes get, I think has anyone not shared? Okay. I know it was like 2 minutes ago, but I sometimes have missed people. Yeah, so I think that as we go along, we're going to be exploring how much layering we do, because you can get right into like what Hans Hofmann used to do with pen and ink, which was like a lot of line work. And then you can also get into gestural, very scribbly, as I actually am very excited with the potential of, what Pearl suggested is doing, like architectural, or say if you see you're traveling and you see a band or people moving and doing those really quick wire like drawings with ink is so fantastic. And there is something about traveling and using ink that is really wonderful, is that you can't take it back. So when you are traveling and unless you have a lot of time on your hands, which usually people don't, you've got your sketchbook and you're trying to capture a moment, that energy that you in 20 minutes of sitting there capturing something architectural or just with a little hint of people, that would be another class. But I think that ink is a good tool for that, simply because you are making a commitment and you're like, I'm capturing this in the moment, instead of when you do it with pencil, you feel like you can go in and change it. And that's not the point of sometimes, right? Anyway, So I'm gonna get myself set up for some watercolor and just talk about how we can go in with it as an accent. As I'm setting that up, I'm gonna sorry, as I'm setting that up, could we shout out animals of interest as we have for next week, the Boyd's dragon, which is a really cool reptile. And it's a great challenge. If you're gonna go crazy doing, even if you're not interested in reptiles, it's a fantastic challenge that we can do together and keep each other sane. But
We do some with wavy fur.
sorry, what was that again?
We do something with wavy fur. I don't have a animal suggestion, but can't remember, was it who said they wanted to do pet portraits of their
Annie.
Annie? And I, like mine has curly wavy.
Ah, I see. So you're thinking ahead at those things. Okay, well, I'll mark that down. The first thing that comes to mind is a sheep, but I'm not sure unless it's one of those weird patchy black and white sheep or a Highland cow. Actually, I can show you something. I think I'll put it in the follow-up. I've done a marqueur. Was
Didn't
anyone?
we did a marqueur for
Yeah.
Yeah.
I thought you were in that class, Stacy.
Yeah.
So that to me is wavy hair. I'm going to show it to everyone here. I'm just going to pull it up. I do have the original here, but I think it's just better if I find it in my drive. So when we think of wavy hair, when you think of an animal, I'd like for you to think like this, because I'd like to do something that isn't just a common animal. Here's the demo. Here's the drawing.
Wow, that's great.
It was such a great challenge, you know, with the horns and the contour description of the twists of the horns. So I'd love to do something, if we're going to do wavy hair, that's just a little bit offbeat. That is my only request. Not saying that sheep aren't cool, just they're well, they can be on the table. They can be. Any other thoughts for just animals you wanted to do and hoped that I had on a list?
A hummingbird?
Ooh. That's cool. Okay, hummingbird.
That would be good because the hummingbird is my nemesis.
Have you, in what medium?
I did it in acrylic and I ended up giving it to the person I did it for as a gift, but she liked it, I hate it.
Yeah.
Oh, that's good. I'm
But
not, listen,
she's my mother-in-law, so I don't think she would tell me if she hated it anyways.
Oh.
I just think it's wonderful that she loved it. That's what truly matters when you're putting something out in the world. Because a lot of times, you know, you can decide to hate something but someone else would like it, right? Mm-hmm. Oh. Any other animals? I've always wanted to do a shrew.
Oh.
Yeah, like an elephant nose shrew. Oh my God, they're so cute.
Would it be really similar to this, or is it a lot different?
Oh, it's a lot different.
Okay.
It looks like the little desert mouse that was in Dune. His big ears. They're tiny and it's got a little long nose. Looks like, because that's how they eat. Okay, so I've got my watercolors out, and I'm going to suggest that for anyone who wanted to do watercolor pencils, it's such a good choice, or even pastel pencils. And then how you would go out, I'm just going to start out with the pencils, just to show that you would go in with a very angled, because you're not doing all the fine line work anymore. You've done all that. You just worked all morning doing that. So now you're going in with a very light pressure with the pencil in the direction of the fur. Okay, so you can almost scribble it in there. And I would still suggest to keep it a bit gentle pressure and build up at least 3 different colors. So you're sort of looking at what you have in your stash of products, and you're picking 3 different colors. There's actually a lot more of a warmer kind of yellowish. You can even choose just very specific separate colors and pencil crayons, like so, and just go yellow or something warmer for the lighter areas, and going to a cooler color into where we get into the darker areas, but that you're still layering them past each other so that there is that transition. Okay, so it's actually larger hatches, really. I will be wetting that. You can either leave it, you don't even have to wet it. I quite like it, with just, I'm kind of like an approach with a regular colored pencil. But if you're going to go in with water, here, I will wet it actually now, here. And you can let that dry and go in again. Add some, oh, it's not brown enough or red enough or whatever. You can work these pencils into each other when they're wet, but I would suggest to just be patient. It'll dry fairly quickly. You can even use watercolor on top, which is what I'm going to do. So I'm going to use a burnt sienna here. And I'm just accenting, right? Because we've done all the value. So I'm just coming in. I feel, this is all a style choice, but I feel having skips and white of the paper is still quite nice. So you don't have to cover up everything. I'm going to choose actually like a blue. Blue and burnt sienna makes a really nice kind of greenish, like teal-ish color. But again, it's kind of nice coming into the shadowy parts with that. I tend to like color, so it really is up to you. It does make it look a bit swampy, but I like he's like a swamp cappy. The Amazon, who's been to the Amazon River? Marley, have you been there?
I have.
Yeah, so what color is the water, if you don't mind me asking? Like if you were to give it a paint color choice.
Black.
It's
It's pretty dirty.
Laura, have you been there too? No. So this color is actually going to unify everything that you've done in a way of color, as color does. I would suggest to keep any of the areas in the sun like a warmer tone. So I'll use like a yellow ochre mixed with that burnt sienna just to have some conscious temperature choices there. You can see I'm keeping this really, really loose. And I'm actually, you could start to change things too at this point. Like I kind of felt like my nose wasn't really dark enough. So now I can do that. Yeah, see, that feels better to me. Woohoo. Remember, watercolor dries lighter, but I don't want to take away from all of the ink. That's again, just personal. It's not necessary. It's an accent. And so you would think about this in the same way, actually going in with ink. If say you did a watercolor sketch, you could think about going in with ink again as an accent. Oh, and then the water, this is again why we didn't need a lot of stuff happening in the water, even though, you know, it takes time to, for yourself to get to know what balance feels like to you. Because, you know, when we think about the principles and elements and balance, and what does that look like, and why I would suggest more or less, it has everything to do with a feeling and intuitive feeling. And so at some point you will be able to make those decisions and just say, oh no, it needs more. There needs to be more here for this to feel balanced for me. So that comes. You might already feel that. And if you don't, it will come. Okay, so for the water, I'm going to go in very hardly need anything at all. Less is more. I'm going to bring it, although I am going to bring it right up to the capybara's body. That I feel is important. So that it actually looks like he's submerged if I didn't capture that enough in the drawing. Now that I have blue in the water, I feel like maybe this bird could have a little bit, who cares? Like this reference photo, throw it out. Now you can kind of get playful with the colors. And I think, not that he's going to be a blue jay or anything, but yeah, I want him to have some blue. Oh, he can have an orange hat. Yeah. Yes, yes, yes. He's got an orange mohawk. And I'm gonna, because I love to, I'm gonna do a couple of splatters, little magical splatters here and there. Not too many, just enough. I also think that maybe using some of like your cooler colors, like the blue in the water, just in as a layer. So even if it's a pencil crayon, just like a little hint of it in some of the shadow spots.
Char, I have to go, so I'll see you next week.
Okay, babe.
Bye now.
I will email you. Have a great day. Rest of your day. Bye, Marley.
Bye-bye.
So now I don't know if it's possible to share if you're doing watercolor, because you can't tip it up. So we might actually be you can email me or we could share next week. But anyone who wants to share before we go, just say the word.
I'm using my these little guys that I bought last year.
Oh, they're water soluble, aren't they?
Yep. So that's what I got so far.
These, oh, sorry, I just have to take me off spotlight here. Oh, I'm sorry. One
That's
second.
okay.
There we go.
There we are.
Oh, I love the color. Yes. The bird's not colored yet, is he?
No, not yet.
Not yet. Yeah. Okay. I love it. So you've got, I would do the bird like a warmer, like a reddish, just to complement. And yeah, it's awesome. I think it's perfect. I don't know if I do anymore at the Cappy.
No, I think he's good.
Yes.
But
Sorry,
it's these little things like this, I don't know what they are, these little brushes, these brush pens, that's what they're called. They come in a variety of colors, but I've been using just like a water
brush?
Like a water brush just to wet it first. Or I've been
Ah.
coloring it in and then watering it afterwards and seeing what the difference is.
Do they become permanent at any time
Yes. Oh yeah, it's permanent.
when they dry?
Yeah.
Oh, so I like that you're going and touching, you're almost like stealing a little bit of the color.
Yeah.
Okay, I know it's 12:30. I know people have to go. I can tell because we just lost Pearl, and Pearl is busy. She said she was. So, oh no, Pearl's here. Who did we just lose? As you'd think with 6 people, I wouldn't forget somebody. It's I'm sorry. I heard it on my end that there was a drop off of the Zoom. So normally I'm not, because in the past, I've taught 2 classes back to back, and then I would be like, okay, guys, I'm out, but I'm not feeling that today. So if you have to go, no problem. But if you want to, if you need just an extra 5-10 minutes, we can do that. Yeah, Maggie, I've heard that people have gotten those water brushes like a set. I actually bought a set a couple years ago and I lost it. I don't know where it is. But so I know that you've got the actual brush pens that are like felt tipped.
Yeah.
Or are they fiber tipped? But I mean, you can get the empty water brush pens and you can put ink in them in different strengths.
Yeah.
Just so in the future, because I don't know if you can replace those individually.
I don't know. I was wondering that as well too, because I was trying to figure out, do these actually open up afterwards? But they don't, like there's no way to open it.
Yeah. So you might at some point just say, I'm going to make my own. I love that you got the set. I'm just saying that,
yeah,
it's like you can do that.
Because I think you can buy the clear ones. This is what you would just put your water in, and this is, instead of using like
that's exactly what I mean. Yeah.
Like a brush, you can get the clear ones and then just add, I'm thinking just your watercolor or ink or whatever it is that you want to put in.
Either.
What that would be like with ink.
Yeah, either. I would just be mindful of if it's acrylic ink, because it is permanent, that you have to really dilute it. Like it needs to be able to come out of a bladder. Technically it's called a bladder. Yeah. I love these travel tips, because when you do, I have it here? I'll show you what I travel with. I love this thing. I bought this in Arizona last year. I've had, just little pencil cases or whatever, but this is like something that sticks to your sketchbook. And it only fits a certain amount of things. So I usually have my brush pen. I have my charcoal, because I love charcoal, and then I have some colors, like just really basic rainbow of colors, and then I have a water brush, which, by the way, where is that? Oh my gosh, see, I keep losing things. But yeah, just something like when you're traveling, keeping it really minimal. And, you know, some people bring those little travel sets of watercolors, but even that's actually sometimes too much. Like I really think, what is it that you need? You really only need a primary palette, like tiny amounts of red, blue, yellow to make anything that's on the go. Oh, his legs. The bird has legs, right? Yes, he does. I can tell you how many times I have forgotten the legs of a bird. It's embarrassing.
That's like the rooster we did last year.
What did we forget?
The legs and the feet. Like, can't he be drawn? It's just like standing in tall grass, because I hate doing feet of birds.
I know, but it's actually so worth doing. You know, it really is. And getting to the point where, because if you avoid it, then you'll never,
Yeah.
you know, you'll never figure it out, like that there is a shape. And as long as you get that sort of basic shape in there, I'd say it doesn't have to be detailed at all, but yeah, I know what you mean.
You don't learn anything by avoiding it. That's for sure.
It. Oh yeah, I used to draw hands like mittens until my friend was like, you know, you can learn how to draw hands. Like, it's not even that hard. It's just shapes, just like breaking down shapes. And if you draw a hand a day, and then I was like, rock star hands. Like I was like, yeah, I'm drawing everyone's hands.
That's color.
But I love that drawing a day project you're doing, Annie. It's like, I got to get into that again. I've done it throughout my life, but man, is it ever inspiring? Just a little sketch a day, you know? It's awesome.
Yeah, I found taking your fearless drawing classes really helpful, just to remember, you know, how to do all the different techniques and stuff. And then when I have time, I'll sketch it in more detail.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, do you go back to like, do you sketch it again a second time, or do you go back to it and just add more?
No, I just take more time and I add more detail. And, you know, what originally was a 15-minute sketch could end up being an hour.
I know, isn't it crazy? How do you lose an hour? I was actually going to call one of my classes, the Sunday morning one, how to lose a morning. How to make your morning disappear, sort of thing. Yeah.
Okay, I'm running off, so I'm just gonna share very quickly.
I'd love to see
I
Pearl.
shall finish it later.
Oh, fabulous.
But at least I got the bird in, I think.
Yeah.
And we'll work on some colors later.
You know, it's interesting how the placement of the bird actually makes the other ear look like an ear. It is wild because it didn't, for what it's worth, I even forgot my ear, but it actually really makes sense with the color now. And I love Herbie and I can't wait to see. So thank you so much, Pearl. I think next week, if we can all bring Herbie back to the table and do a group share, that would be lovely.
Right.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, I think that we're all good. Okay, so it's what we'll do, and I will give you an email with the link of the recording, and then I'm gonna think about the Boyd's Dragon project and give you a very specific, this is what I recommend, so that we can have all that ready, and we'll have that later today. Okay.
Is that something that we could sketch out earlier, or we could work on, or?
Sure. Yeah, I will give the reference photo and also I will take a picture of my sketchbook of how you can break it down, just to have that understanding prior to going, logging in on Saturday next week.
Great.
Okay.
Thank you.
And you're welcome to reply to my emails if you think of anything. Don't hesitate. I'll get back to you when I can. Okay, I promise.